thanks for staying with us for another edition of the news from Africa and the world. We begin in Africa, where the coronavirus pandemic comes to add fuel to an already blooming fire, as parts of the continent are at a high risk of aggravated food insecurity, a result of COVID-19. Measures to curb the spread of the virus, like lockdowns, are preventing farm workers from going to the farm, and so a disruption of food supplies. The fears of hundreds of millions of Africans facing food insecurity are fast rising. This far, the COVID-19 fight, countries like Uganda, Democratic Republic of Congo, South Africa and Kenya have even witnessed protests because of food shortages. Many of the governments, like that of Kenya, are struggling to manage the situation, but it is proving difficult. Many still find it hard to feed as they live day by day from their daily earnings. Money to purchase the little available food is also unavailable to many. The fear of hunger in many African countries, therefore, is likely to be greater than the fear of COVID-19. In Mali, faithful worshippers continue holding their 5 times daily prayers at various Islamic places of worship, despite the spread of the coronavirus in their country. The fidels pray side by side with no safety distance between them as prescribed by the World Health Organization. Although measures have been taken to contain the spread of this virus, the closing down of mosques has been excluded, which, according to Mahmoud Dicko, former president of the Haut Conseil Islamique Malien, may be difficult to maintain, as 94% of the country's population is Muslim. With little or no regard for the pandemic, the streets of Bamako are still blooming. With about 148 confirmed COVID-19 cases in Mali and 13 deaths, medical practitioners insist that the fight against COVID-19 must be a collective effort. Still in Africa, suspicion and fears of the coronavirus spread is equally causing the deportation of Ethiopian workers from Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates. About 3,000 of them have been repatriated to Addis Ababa in the past weeks, and this is an even greater cause for concern. With 92 confirmed COVID-19 cases in Ethiopia and about 5,800 in Saudi Arabia, there is great fear of an increased spread in the country, so precautions are being taken. Upon arrival, the deported migrants are put in mandatory confinement, but future overcrowding of the quarantine centers is another problem. In view of the Ethiopian government's shortage of capacity to effectively cope with the risk of the situation, the United Nations Organization has demanded a temporary ban on further repatriation. After the IMF, now the G20 countries have made a step to lighten the burden of poor and indebted countries in the world as they fight COVID-19. Nations of the G20 group, which make up about 90% of global economy, have decided to suspend the debt payments by the world's poorest countries. This decision will be implemented till the end of the year, starting from the 1st of May 2020. The mentioned debt mounts up to about $20 billion, with a total of 77 poor countries in the world to benefit from the agreement. In the meantime, the G20 gesture is meant to alleviate a part of the heavy burden of these countries in combating the coronavirus pandemic, but worries are it may be an even greater burden in the future. It is only a delay, as the agreement requires that the debt still be paid between 2020 and 2024, including the accumulated interest within the period. Don't let us die from COVID-19. These were the words of a group of detainees in the U.S. Immigration Detention Center. There are great fears of the pandemic rapidly spreading amongst them in the overcrowded camps. There, social distancing is impossible, and no hand sanitizers, face masks or gloves are made available for them. The detainees are begging to be released, and some even expressed that they would rather be deported than locked up and exposed to COVID-19. Despite all the long-lasting calls, only a handful of the detainees have so far been released with the help of the American Civil Liberties Union. Many of their cries have fallen on deaf ears, but the detainees and other human rights movements keep campaigning for their immediate release with regards to the spread of COVID-19. However, despite the lockdown being observed in the USA, the Immigration and Custom Enforcement continues carrying out massive arrests of undocumented immigrants. With increasing calls for the release of low-risk prisoners in the world for the fight off the coronavirus, Turkey too has adhered to the call. Members of the Turkey parliament have passed a law to free thousands of prisoners in connection to the coronavirus pandemic. This involves some 45,000 detainees from the country's overcrowded prison, and it is equal to about one-third of Turkey's prison population. It is intended by the members of parliament to limit the further spread of COVID-19 in jails. This gesture has, however, come under much criticism. It does involve minor offenders and those who have already served at least half of their sentence, but the exclusion of those imprisoned for terrorism charges, many of whom are government opponents, is strongly criticized. The release also excludes some old persons and others that critics judge worthy of the release. They therefore refer to the law as unequal and unlawful. However, beneficiaries are expected to remain in confinement. South Korea's April 15th extra precocious parliamentary election results are now known, and it is a total cause for celebration for the ruling Democratic Party. Amidst the coronavirus fear and prevention, the country, however, is said to have had its largest election turnout in 28 years, with a landslide victory for the ruling party. Out of the 300 seats in parliament, 180 were won by the Democratic Party of President Moon Jae-in. This was gotten from early results on April 15, and if they are accurate, then it would be the biggest win by any party since 1987. This massive victory is thought of to be due to the fact that the weaknesses of the current powers are buried by the COVID-19 outbreak. The authorities have severally been praised for their handling of the outbreak. That was it for this edition of the news. Thanks for staying with us, and don't go away.